This is a relay project.
Real Talk starts right now. Here's Ryan Jespersen.
I want to welcome you to a very special edition of Real Talk. In just a second, we're going to check in with Chief Billy Morin, a big win for the Conservatives in Edmonton Northwest. This guy is the youngest chief in Enoch Cree Nation history, former Grand Chief, and of course on his way to Ottawa to represent his constituents in that riding. Naheed Nenshi riding a high, I have to imagine, after a packed house at the NDP convention right here in the Alberta capital of Edmonton over the weekend. Pretty significant resolutions, including members voting to be able to automatically opt out. They want to be able to opt out of federal NDP memberships. This has long been a point of conversation and potentially a sticking point for some would-be members of the provincial party that didn't want to tie themselves to the federal party. That's one of the developments over the weekend. Of course, the Alberta NDP leader had a lot to say as well about the provincial government's relationship with Ottawa, and in particular, these rumblings about a potential national unity crisis now that the Mark Carney Liberals have won that federal election. We'll get into that with NDP leader Nenshi. And of course, it is the 5th of May. And if you're a nerd and a geek like we are when it comes to Alberta politics, you know that today marks the 10-year anniversary of Rachel Notley's Orange Crush, when her NDP upset the PC establishment, ending a 43-year and change Conservative dynasty in the province of Alberta. The former Premier, Rachel Notley, will be joining us live in studio in about a half an hour's time to look back on that 10-year period. We lead off with Chief Morin in just a moment. First, I want to let you know this episode is happening with the presenting sponsorship of Alberta's top online real estate school at Relo.ca, where better real estate training starts. If you're looking around you see these for sale signs popping up this time of year in your neighborhood. This is when everybody's looking to buy or sell. That means opportunity, of course, as well. If you're working for yourself as a realtor, whether it's commercial or residential real estate, you're going to want to start with Relo. Learning online for the bold and ambitious, the only real estate school that sets you up with a professional practice network, professional development webinars, and more. You can check out everything online at Relo.ca. Okay, that's Relo.ca. You want to use the promo code as well, Ryan100. That's all one word, Ryan100. That's going to knock $100 off the Alberta residential real estate bundle and the Alberta commercial real estate bundle. That's Ryan100 when you get started at Relo.ca. All right, I'll tell you what we'll do. We've got Billy Morin hanging out here. Billy, it's so good to see you, by the way. Congratulations on the election win, my man.
Yeah, good morning.
Yeah, we've got we've got some moving parts here. This is what happens when you do your show live, and we've got Naheed Nenshi ready to check in for 10 minutes. You got to leave for the airport in about a half an hour. You want to hang out and listen to the Nenshi interview? We'll get to you in 10 minutes. Hang out, have your coffee, my man.
Yeah, I got time for the opposition leader of Alberta.
All right, good stuff. Yeah. Well, why don't we do that? Before we get to Billy Morin, we'll say hello to Naheed Nenshi. I know this is going to be a busy Monday for this guy on the heels of the convention in Edmonton. It's nice to see your face. Welcome back to the show. How are you feeling after a weekend with a packed house at the convention center in Edmonton?
Well, good morning, Ryan. Thank you. It's been a long time since I've been on the show. I was just thinking about that.
Yeah, we were thinking the same thing.
Great weekend. Largest NDP convention ever in Alberta. Wonderful. My first convention, actually, and wonderful to be with a huge room full of the party. Not just the party faithful, but folks who are really, really interested in a better Alberta, interested in how to build a better Alberta. Totally energizing, totally invigorating, and I might be a little exhausted right now.
Yeah, no kidding. Well, there's a lot going on right now, and I think a lot of people look to a convention to kind of get a sense of the tone that you're going to set as opposition leader. Before you become opposition leader, you got to win that by-election in Edmonton, Strathcona, and I know you've been chomping at the bit. It's been a while since you were named the party's nominee in that riding, so you're sitting and waiting. It has to be called by June 30th. What's the status of that?
Well, I mean, that's a good question for the Premier. And by the way, before I go any further, I see that you have Billy Morin on, and I just want to say, hey, congratulations. Thank you for all your service, and I sure hope that partisan politics is fun for you. Let me tell you, going from mayor to partisan politics, really weird. But I know you're going to be great at it. So congratulations. That said, speaking of elections, we actually have two by-elections we're waiting on here in Edmonton, and rumors are rife that there may be a third one at the same time. And certainly the premier wanted to keep me out of the legislature as long as possible. Now, if she calls the by-election now, I won't make it in time for the spring sitting. So really, she could call it any time now. I know they just nominated their candidate in Edmonton Ellerslie in suburban Edmonton over the weekend. So I'm expecting that by-election to be called tomorrow, today, next week, anytime now. We're ready. I've been sitting here for months. They've had a nominated candidate for months. There's no excuse not to call this by-election other than just keep me out of the legislature. And I don't like playing games like that. So let's get started.
Yeah, we've had conversations on this show, some musing, some comments from guests that have gone on and they've sort of seen what's happening in Alberta's political landscape, in particular, the threats to national unity and this sort of idea, the themes around this. And they're going, where's Nenshi? Like, where's the NDP on this? Why isn't the party pouncing on this type of thing in opposition? Is part of the challenge that you're not in the legislature as an elected member, or is this strategy? Let the Conservatives dig themselves a hole and you sit back and watch?
Well, a bit of both, but part of the challenge is that folks like a narrative. So let me tell you that if you visit separatistsmith.ca, and I sure hope you will, along with tens of thousands of other Albertans who may or may not be listening to the Ryan Jespersen show, you can sign up and show your anger and horror at the premier playing games with the future of our country. You're welcome to do that. And in fact, we've been very active on this stuff and very, very hitting people across the province on these conversations, which I think is really important. I mean, folks who watch your show may be really watching Question Period, and if they did, then they'd see we've asked hundreds and hundreds of questions on corrupt care. We've asked hundreds and hundreds of questions on separatism, and we will continue to hold the government to account. But what's much more important is really reaching out to citizens, really reaching out to Albertans. And we have seen, particularly in the last several weeks, not what we've heard reported a lot in the media. Oh, Albertans are angry. Albertans are flirting with separatism. What we've seen is, yes, Albertans are angry. And what they're angry at is Premier Smith. They're angry that she is so guileless that she literally wrote a letter to the Prime Minister saying, if you don't solve these problems, I will cause a national unity crisis. And one of those problems, by the way, is bring back plastic straws. I hate paper straws as much as anybody, but I'm not risking the country over it. And this is the issue with this government, is they don't have any interest in governing. They aren't doing anything to fix healthcare, to fix education, even to fix their own wasteful spending. Instead, they just pick fights all the time because that's what keeps their base excited and keeps their base going. But when you start picking these fights all the time, you start something you might not be able to control. And I'll give you an example that occurred to me over the weekend. Weirdly, I happened to be in the room when former UK Prime Minister David Cameron announced to a bunch of heads of state at an international meeting some years ago that he was going to go forward with a referendum on leaving the European Union. Now, remember, Cameron was opposed to Brexit. He never wanted it. But he said, there's people in my party who want me to do this. I'm just going to do it. And he made it very clear on that day that this was never going to pass, that international audience shouldn't worry. He was just using this as leverage to try and get a better deal and everything would be fine. And we know what happened. There was a guy called Jason Kenney, people may remember him, who used to complain bitterly at the end of his time that the lunatics were taking over the asylum, quote unquote. And I remember saying to him at the time, Premier, the arsonist gives up any right to call the fire department. So you start playing with these forces that you can't control, very bad things can happen. But our premier's got nothing else. She's got no other gear than to fight with Ottawa because that's all she's done for the almost 2.5, almost 3 years she's been premier. Just picks fights all the time, and she's trying to distract people from the disasters that she's creating here. Alberta has among the highest unemployment in the country. We've got the highest inflation in the country. We've got no real businesses saying they want to invest in Alberta because of all of the uncertainty, and our healthcare and education systems are in chaos. So the premier just says, yeah, but I can fight for you. Well, you know what? As I said in my speech on the weekend, over on our side of the aisle, we don't pick fights, we win fights. And that's what she doesn't know how to do.
So I tweeted last week that I think that the premier should just give Alberta sovereigntists what they want. Give them a referendum and let's settle this once and for all. Would you do the same thing if you were premier?
Yeah, I said that this weekend, and I said, listen, Premier, stop flirting with this. Just stop pretending, oh, I'm just standing back, and this is what Albertans want. This has nothing to do with me. Well, you're changing the law to make it much easier to have a referendum. Show up in the legislature today, say you're calling a referendum. We'll be happy to join in with you. And when you get the thumping defeat from Albertans that you so resoundingly deserve, and Albertans saying, stop this, we are proud Canadians, then please shut up, leave public life, and leave it to Albertans who are proud Canadians to build a better Alberta and a better Canada. Instead of dragging us through this endless fighting and this endless publicity tour that you're on to try and make yourself look good that only hurts Albertans.
Your members over the weekend voted in favor of allowing for an opportunity to opt out or being automatically opted out of the federal NDP. And I think probably, is it safe to say for provincial, for the provincial party, it's been inconvenient over the past few years. And I have to imagine that there have been memberships that have not been sold because people didn't want to be tied to the federal party. I also have to believe that this is politically convenient for you. It's a tough time to be tied to the federal party right now. Isn't this a good thing for Naheed Nenshi?
Well, our convention was always this weekend, long before we knew there'd be an election. And this was always coming to our convention because it's something I promised in the leadership last year. And what you're saying is kind of interesting, right? Which is, yes, there have been people who've been hesitant about it, but at the same time, last year, we were the largest provincial political party in the country, 87,000 members. So a lot of people said, well, I'm joining anyway. And because it's your show and because people are really into some of this nerdy stuff, I'll get into some of the nerdy stuff. Most provincial political parties are independent of their federal arms. Even the UCP and the CPC are not actually formally connected. The NDP is a little different in that the party is one party across the country, but that confuses people because the provincial chapters are completely independent in terms of policy. And certainly we've disagreed loudly with our federal counterparts on things like pipelines and energy policy. We have been completely independent financially. But the one thing that was still irritating folks was that the convention had been, even though it didn't really say anything about it in the Constitution, the convention had been that if you join the provincial party, you are automatically a member of the federal party. And during my leadership, and in fact, for years before I got involved, members have been saying, let's change that. Let's give each member the option. Because as you know, there are a lot of Carney Nenshi voters out there. There are a lot of Poilievre Nenshi voters out there. And we want people to know that the Alberta New Democrats welcomes you. You share our values, we welcome you. And we welcome you not just to vote for us, but also to become a part of our movement. And so overwhelmingly, the members this weekend voted to allow people to have that kind of choice. And I think it was a very unifying moment for the whole party.
Yeah, I heard you did speak to the this kind of coalition. You've got Nenshi Carney voters and you've got Nenshi Poilievre voters. Did you see evidence and representation from both at convention? And if so, how do you wrap your mind around that?
Yeah, I mean, people didn't wander around the convention. It's not like a UCP convention where people are there, sometimes for their own ego and to make a point about their faction. So people didn't wander around the convention going, hey, I'm a federal liberal or I'm a federal conservative and here I am. People were really focused on what can we do together better, which I just loved so much. And the federal politics really had nothing to do with it. We were talking about provincial issues, healthcare, education, the provincial economy, jobs, affordability, and no coal mining on the eastern slopes.
How what you reference unemployment and in particular Alberta among the top, not in a good way. This is not a list you want to be near the top on across the country. How would a Nenshi-led government address unemployment in Alberta? How would you kickstart employment opportunities for or unemployed Albertans?
That's a great question, and I've got the track record for it, right? 11 years as mayor of Calgary, even through a brutal recession, keeping up employment numbers in that city to one of the most vibrant local economies in the country. And what we have in this government is a lack of an economic diversification plan. The Minister of Jobs, Economy, and Technology is rarely in the House. We don't know where he is, but we have really no evidence that he's doing anything to attract businesses here. So you have to work on a number of levels. You have to attract global investment, which is running away from Alberta because of the political uncertainty the premier is causing. You have to help people start new businesses, and you have to help entrepreneurs grow job-creating local businesses into medium and large businesses. So whether you're talking about my parents and their laundromat in Forest Lawn that I grew up behind the counter of, or if you're talking about the multi-billion-dollar companies that I helped grow professionally and I helped attract when I was mayor of Calgary, you need a strategy that encompasses this. And very briefly, that has to be a multi-sectoral strategy. It means supporting, not just cheerleading for, but fundamentally supporting and being proud of, not being ashamed of, Canadian energy in all its forms: conventional, unconventional, renewable, new kinds of technology and innovative technologies that help us use carbon and bitumen in new ways. So that's one big piece of it. But there's also enormous opportunities and things you never hear this government talk about: life sciences, agri-food and agri-tech, film and media, travel and tourism, financial services, legal services, high tech. All of this stuff needs to come in together. And what we have now is a government that basically once in a while says we should have data centers and we'll have massive public subsidy for data centers because they read that that was important and people are building them. They are important and people are building them, but they also create very, very few jobs. A massive multi-billion-dollar data center will have fewer than 100 full-time jobs working on it. That's not an economic strategy. It's a nice to have. But the economic strategy needs to be much more thoughtful. And I've done that. I've done that well for a long time. And we see no evidence that this government has any experience or desire to actually work on that.
All right, Mr. Nenshi, in closing, a follow-up here from Chris Labossiere, who I'm quite certain is watching us from Europe right now. He says the job of the premier is to completely delegitimize the idea of a referendum and stop it in its tracks. He says, fight every petition with process to ensure that all are 100% compliant. Tell Albertans, Canadians, investors that she'll do everything in her power to fight for Alberta inside Canada. She must. He says, forget about giving anybody the belief that even holding a referendum won't cause generational harm well beyond anyone's imagination. He says, Mr. Nenshi needs to say that, not pull this stupid idea anywhere forward. It's a zero-sum game, and he includes the need to fight for political stability right now. The UCP must deal with her as leader if she doesn't back down to the overwhelming percentage of Albertans who don't want this. What would you say to Chris?
Well, of course, Chris is right, as he so often is, that even this talk is causing business instability. Even this talk is chasing away investment. But here's the thing. She's going to do it. They've already tabled the legislation to make it happen. This referendum is almost inevitable. And I say that if you're going to do it anyway, then do it fast and let's get it over with. But you're right, the damage has already been done. And a real leader, a grown-up leader, would turn to her fringe and say, quit it. But you know what she can't say? And we've challenged her to say it in the House so many times. She simply cannot say, I'm a proud Canadian. She simply cannot say, I do not support separatism. She won't say it. And is she a separatist? I don't know. It's not for me to say. I know that she surrounds herself with people who actually have separatist feelings. But she's certainly using this for political advantage. And Chris is right. The single most responsible thing to do, the thing to bring stability and confidence in business investment back, is to say, as a real leader would after the election, look, I know people are upset. I know we're kind of mad, but this is democracy. And Alberta has prospered in this country for a really long time. And yeah, we have a lot of things we're super mad about. Equalization is wrong. We need much more support in building export capacity for our sectors, including pipelines. We need a federal government that takes us seriously as an economic engine. And here's my plan for how we're going to do that. Instead, she stokes anger, she stokes resentment, she stokes fear because that's her fuel. But you know what? That is a sugary snack that might fill you up for a minute, but really is not going to lead to a long-term good outcome for anyone. And in fact, as Chris highlights, every time you do it, you scare away business, you scare away investment, and you scare away people into thinking that Alberta is a home they want to stay in. And that is a real shame. And I don't think anybody who voted UCP thought that they were going to get this kind of chaos agent as the premier.
Naheed Nenshi, the leader of Alberta's NDP. Thanks for making time for us the morning after convention. We appreciate it.
Thanks so much, Ryan. Take care.
You got it. Chief Billy Morin coming up in less than 2 minutes. First, I want to remind you that Friesen Brothers right now has you covered on a couple of fronts. First things first, if you don't yet have a plan in place for Mother's Day, they're bringing back their wildly popular Mother's Day brunch at Friesen Brothers Fresh Market Stores. This goes May 10th and 11th. That's the Saturday and Sunday. Friesen Brothers Fresh Market Stores hosting an all-you-can-eat Mother's Day brunch featuring all your favorite traditional brunch treats along with special desserts created by Friesen Brothers Red Seal chefs with family-friendly prices of just $22 for adults, $15 for seniors, and what? $10 for kids 12 and under. It is the perfect occasion to celebrate with the entire family. You can learn more at friesen.com/Mother's Day brunch. And don't forget, at select locations, Friesen Brothers garden centers are open now as well. I know a lot of you probably look to May long weekend for when you're going to get your annuals in there. Think Friesen Brothers at friesen.com. If the big home improvement project this spring is going to be indoors, CaliforniaClosets.ca needs to be your number one place you stop by. Check out online the beautiful work that they do. They can do Murphy beds in second bedrooms to accommodate home offices. They can do dream walk-in closets in the primary bedrooms. They can do entertainment centers like they did for us that'll transform your family's time spent together playing games, watching movies, and of course, they're masters of garage storage systems as well. They can work with any budget, and every installation they do is guaranteed for life. Plus, California Closets of Canada, proudly Canadian-owned. Everything they install in the province of Alberta is manufactured right here in Alberta. You can get that free consultation today at CaliforniaClosets.ca. And it's a great week for golf, especially at Alberta's number one public course at theranchgolf.com. We're thrilled to present our 4th annual Real Talk Golf Classic coming up Thursday, June 19th at The Ranch. If you're the one in charge of your organization's golf tournament, maybe it's a fundraiser, maybe it's for charity, maybe it's just for fun, nobody does more tournaments in the province of Alberta than the Ranch. Can you get this? 120 tournaments a year? That means their team is ready to go, giving you the best advice and helping you pull it off from the culinary front. We serve steaks at ours, but they can work with any menu. And of course, the track plays well as well. Everybody loves golfing at the Ranch. You can take a course tour. Get in touch with their team today at theranchgolf.com. As we officially welcome Chief Billy Morin to the show, fresh off an election win in Edmonton Northwest. Did you know that at the very first Real Talk Golf Classic, a team from Enoch Cree Nation on the 6th hole stepped up to the tee, and one of those golfers, a fellow by the name of Robert Cardinal, nailed the first ever hole-in-one in Real Talk Golf Classic history. Are you aware of this story?
I'm not aware of it, but I do know Cardsy very well, so I'm going to have to bring that up with him. And have bragging rights with me for the rest of the time. I might have sponsored that. I'm not sure, but
you did sponsor it. You did sponsor it,
Yeah.
And the witnesses tell me that it's like about I think it was about 178, 180 yards. He approached with a 6-iron, and it was 2 bounces and in. And everybody that saw it said that he played it very cool, as though he's hit shots like this before. I've always felt bad. I've never had a chance to apologize to him. That was the only tournament that our hole-in-one prize was a mere $20,000. It's now $100,000. So he should have waited a year to do it. But there you go. It's nice to see you here. Like Naheed asked you, are you ready for partisan politics? You're very familiar with community leadership. The youngest Grand Chief in Alberta's history, but are you ready for the partisan politics of an MP role?
Yeah, I always say that, when you're the chief of the nation, it's a lot less people. It's about 3,000 now in Enoch. When I was there, it was about 2,700 or thereabouts. And I am ready, because what I would say is when you're chief, it's your family that really holds you accountable. And there's really cool things about family holding you accountable, and there's some really tough things about holding you accountable. And I got 90,000 approximately constituents now, maybe give or take a few thousand. And I think my family's made me ready for this next step to be a member of parliament.
Yeah, I think everybody, as your tenure wrapped up as chief, everybody was kind of wondering what was going to be next for you, and you held your cards close to your chest. I know that we talked a couple of times, but I think everybody kind of assumed that politics would be a likely and a good landing place for you. What was it that drew you into federal politics? It's not without its sacrifice.
No, I first met Pierre Poilievre in 2020, and it was before he became leader, and we talked about the longer-term picture. Of course, that time I did intend not to do another term as Enoch chief. I was kicking tires when it came to provincial politics as well. Been a lifelong conservative for all my life, basically. So when I really spoke to Pierre and about the vision that he was doing and the track that the CPC wanted to go on, it really aligned with my values, and the timing was right. And you got to get lucky a little bit, and things worked out for me that this was that I could run.
What do you make of what Nenshi was talking about there, the referendum talk and the position that the provincial government's in right now? The Grand Chief Greg Desjardins, I'll let this audience know, Confederacy of Treaty 6 First Nations will be joining us tomorrow to talk about this. They've issued a number of news releases over the past few days firmly rejecting the Premier's recent comments regarding the prospect of Alberta's separation from Canada, and obviously treaties factor into this conversation in a big way. When you were serving as Grand Chief, was this part of the conversation? Was this on your radar at all?
Well, this separation really wasn't on the radar, but I do recall, conflicts between the Indigenous community, First Nations in particular, and the broader sector. I think it was the rail blockades at the time, and I had a very good working relationship with former Premier Kenney at the time, and so there wasn't always, we had to agree, and I had to go to bat for my Indigenous community, so there was that at the time. But I knew this question was coming today, and my answer to that was, when I ran with the CPC, we ran Canada first. It wasn't Canada with asterisks that Alberta was separating. It wasn't Canada that treaties won't be honored. It wasn't Canada where Alberta was separating, period. So I'm not a separatist. I believe in a united Canada. This is full stop. That's where I'm at. And I guess going forward, I did hear at the doors, though. I did hear at the doors from many people, I'm not sure that I want to stay in this country. It's just reality. That's why this is here. But I think we owe it to the country and to the people of Alberta, to my constituents, that we have it's kind of, I'm not going to say a fresh slate. I would love to have been in government. The majority government with the CPC didn't work out. But we have 150 plus years of history in this country, and it's not just going to get given up on a whim of a referendum.
Yeah, well, and I think one of the reasons why we talk about this on the show, and people will say to us, like, and I see it in our live chat right now, powered by Park Power, we see your Real Talkers, we'll get to your comments, but a lot of people are saying, why are you even giving this airtime? Why are you even talking about this? I mean, if polling is accurate on this, up to 1 in 3 Albertans are discontented right now with Alberta's place in Canada. Now, whatever that looks like or whatever the end game is may differ, but 1 in 3 is not nothing. So that's why I think it's important to talk about it. You know that your constituents and others will look to you and your Conservative colleagues to go get a better deal for Alberta in Ottawa. They'll look for you to improve, I'm assuming, the relationship between Alberta and the federal government. What does that look like to you, based on either what people told you at the doors or what you feel inside yourself?
Well, I'm a pragmatic guy, so even when I ran Enoch, it was my unofficial motto was get shit done.
Yeah.
So for locally, being a first-time rookie MP, it's a little hard that you're not in the government seat and you are the official opposition. So for me, I gotta my focus is back to constituents, and some of the best advice that I got was make this constituency about Billy, more than just the Edmonton Northwest and the CPC riding. That it's just another one. And so that is really my focus. But, I was talking to former Premier Notley on the way in here, and she's up next. I think you're saving the best for last in that regard, but all good there. And, even listening to the leader of the opposition, he's talking about how there's alignment with the NDP when it comes to energy development with Alberta.
I noticed you nodding as he was talking about that. What was resonating with you?
Yeah, I'm a staunch defender of Alberta energy, and that's traditional energy and new energy going forward. I was on the hydrogen hub for new energy going forward, but, I always look back to the first Billy Morin. I'm the fourth. And I have this article close to my heart on a screenshot of my phone. It was the Billy Morin the first in the 1950s who was chief, and he talked about oil and gas being kind of the for lack of a better word, the new buffalo that's going to move his nation into the 21st century. So there's traditional oil and gas and energy. We're Alberta. I'm never going to apologize for that. But there's also innovation in that regard. So there's again, I'm idealistic, maybe I'm young, but there's a lot more that Canadians have in common than the differences, and that's really what I want to focus on.
Yeah, you see some of these stories. I think Northern Gateway would be an example where First Nations in BC fought it and ultimately successfully, among others, opponents of that pipeline. But you sort of see as part of this national conversation this idea that First Nations are trying to block the pipelines. But I know that there's also many First Nations that are looking for example ownership opportunities. That would like to participate in that. What do you think the future of energy expansion in Canada could look like, and how could First Nations communities be a part of that?
Well, I'm looking forward to what the Premier has to say today, because the tone has been a little bit more conciliatory over the last 24 hours in terms of giving the new relationship with Canada, kind of a little bit of a clean slate in 2025 and May 5th. So, for me going forward, she mentioned specifically energy corridors. There's alignment there with the Conservative vision for energy corridors as well. And so, one of the coolest ideas that I heard from a UCP minister, a rural minister, Shane Getson, was they've been doing a study at the UCP about energy corridors in this province, but also beyond to get to the coast and get these energy sectors built. And of course, First Nations are going to have a huge impact on that and a huge say on that. And, he floated the idea of, Billy, maybe let's think about it like a port authority. And I got to give a little bit more research on what that exactly looks like. But he's like, maybe the Indigenous nations could be the port authority of these corridors or have some level of aspect of that. So, I look forward to the conversations of energy corridors and how that looks in First Nations participation and true equity as opposed to just consultation for the sake of consultation.
The Premier posting over the weekend just finished a positive first meeting with Prime Minister Mark Carney. She reported that we spoke at length, I'm just quoting her, about the policies and legislations that are holding back Alberta's economy, specific proposals for projects, legislative reforms that will increase market access for Alberta oil and gas, ag products, and other goods. Said that the Prime Minister made it clear he intends to rapidly advance these kinds of nation-building projects in the coming weeks and months. Discussed the ongoing trade dispute with the U.S. and how the feds can work cooperatively with Alberta to advance Canada and Alberta's interests. Continued Premier Smith, repairing the damage to Alberta's economy caused by Ottawa's last 10 years of anti-resource legislation and policies will take tremendous effort and cooperation, but today's conversation, a positive first step. It kind of reminded me of the post from President Donald Trump where he said, I had the phone call with Mark Carney, and the fact that it didn't go completely sideways, or the fact that he didn't refer to him as Governor Carney for that matter, a lot of Canadians saw some hope in that, some promise in that. I think maybe people are a little bit sick of all the saber rattling and all the fighting. They're wanting their elected representatives to, like you said, just start getting shit done.
Yeah, I have some hope that Prime Minister Carney can go down there and get something done for the country. But also what I like the messaging, again, is going back to Canada first. So, Donald Trump and what he does is kind of out of our control. I won't go down a little bit of that road of my personal feelings on that. There's probably some inappropriate words there, but anyways, that aside, I think, again, putting Canada first is really realizing on what the opportunities we have internally. I love it when both levels of government and, you talk to the premiers about getting interprovincial trade barriers down, having First Nations participate in that. And I think, again, the focus has to be on what we can control internally as a country and bringing alignment there when it comes to across 10 provinces and the territories.
I saw you post a photo a while ago of Battle River-Crowfoot MP Damien Kirk, who stepped down. He's going to be, I guess, he'll sit out for however long it takes till the next election. I think politically, actually, it's a pretty savvy move on his part, to be honest with you. He won with a whopping 82% of the vote just a week ago today. But he steps aside so the leader of the party, Pierre Poilievre, can run in a by-election in that riding and get into the House of Commons. Tell us a bit about Mr. Kirk and your thoughts on the by-election, the thoughts on Pierre Poilievre seeking a seat in Alberta.
Yeah, Mr. Kirk, again, I'm a rookie at this. 53,000 doors my team knocked, and it's a new riding, so we had to create everything from scratch. Such a humbling experience. So I want to give a shout out to my team, Brandon Abuteyev, and my campaign team, and other MPs came in to help. Reading 338 gets you a little bit nervous sometimes at the end of the day. So Damien came in and helped us door knock and raise the calling that we were trying to do at the door. So really appreciate that he showed this first time rookie time and effort to come from Southern Alberta to come door knock with me. For Pierre Poilievre, I'm glad he's coming home. I wholeheartedly support him as our leader, and I think this is the right move for the party at this time. I think, again, Conservatives have in the past, we have a reputation for eating our own. At this time, there's no need for that. I think we need to pause, have Pierre come back to his seats, have stable leadership at this time, and really reevaluate over the next little while on what the next moves are for the party.
Has there been a caucus meeting yet? Like, I know you're on your way to Ottawa, literally from the studio here, but have you had a chance to talk to your colleagues? Has he addressed the members collectively?
So he's been doing a lot of one-on-ones. I have had a short conversation with Pierre, and tomorrow is our first caucus meeting to review as a team.
Do you get the sense that there's consensus support for him across the board?
I do get the sense that there is a full consensus for him across the board, and I do fully expect him to be our leader for the next foreseeable future. Yeah.
Are you going to Ottawa with a specific, I won't call it a mandate, but do you have one thing that you're hoping to achieve here in your first term?
Yeah, if I can get stuff done like for the constituents, again, I think you're in a little bit of a more better position when you're in government, but that's not the reality at this time. I love doing big projects. I think the biggest projects in our constituency is the $1 billion upgrade or whatever it was to the Yellowhead Highway. Yeah. In my riding too, it's a huge riding. So there's the north side and the west side, and again, being the business guy that I am. Heidelberg's also there, and so there's been talk about some the carbon capture potential at the cement plant and the international investment. So I'd like to advocate for that. But again, bringing it full back to the constituents, if there's anything I can do to advocate for them, getting to know the community leagues, getting to know the different ethnic communities, and really being an advocate for them. One of the things that I realized is again, door knocking. A lot of the crime has been specifically a concern for them coming down from 127th Street. So I think I can open doors for them in that regard and really advocate for them. Redevelopment, even on a municipal level. I know people get that confused on what's municipal, what's federal. But at the end of the day, I could still help open doors for them. And then finally, it's new to me, and I think there's a bigger picture here. But at the end of the day, what's new to me is I understand that MPs have to do a lot of immigration advocacy for families here, and I do look forward to working with communities in the backed up files there as well.
Yeah, right on. And I suppose maybe be mentally and otherwise prepared to gear up for another election within the next 12 to 18 months.
Yeah. I will admit I got tired, but I will look back at that election as truly life-changing and humbling when people put thousands of hours into you and for a cause that's greater than yourself about running a country and doing right by 190,000 people and families and friends, and people are vulnerable and crying to you at the doors and saying how proud of you are and the emotion and the investment that they put into this. Truly a humbling experience. I don't want one this year, I'll be frank, but
I don't think Canadians do.
Absolutely not. And but when the time comes, I'll be ready to do it again.
Awesome. Well, Chief Morin, thanks so much for making time for us, squeezing us in before you hit the airport. Best of luck in Ottawa. We look forward to hearing from you again.
Yeah, absolutely. Glad to be
here.
You
got it. That's Chief Billy Morin. He's the MP-elect right up until he swears in for Edmonton Northwest. Rachel Notley in just a minute. Right now, I want to make sure that UCAN Youth Services is on your radar, a nonprofit charitable organization dedicated to helping young people out of harm's way and onto a path of economic independence. We've been talking to you about their different programs, and they've got really, really wonderful and important resources for 12 to 17-year-olds. That's their Relentless Outreach program. And then they've got these ready-to-work programs for young adults aged 18 to 24. So they got two different things going on. The Relentless program is where outreach workers are doing everything they can to reach out to youth, empower them in making positive, healthy, and life-changing decisions. These are 12 to 17-year-olds that are interacting with police on a regular basis, not in a good way. And of course, that's standing in the way of them finding housing, food security, education or employment opportunities. You know it. Well, thanks with the support of UCAN, school factors are being addressed. Employment factors and opportunities are being presented. Peer groups, individual factors like one's identity, societal factors, alienation, poverty. This is a holistic approach to addressing a very serious issue, and the Relentless Outreach program is paying dividends. You can learn more about it, including exactly how this is funded, by checking out their website, ucan.ca. Short story, UCAN is looking for your support. If you want to learn more about ways you can get involved, including making a donation, you'll find it all on the website. Real Talk is proud to partner with UCAN Youth Services. Athabasca University, in the business of getting you set and ready to go to pursue your dreams, whatever that is. Maybe it's a societal dream. You want to be your next community leader. Maybe you want to better understand political science. Maybe you'd love to work in human resources, assisting others as they transition their way through different employment opportunities. Maybe you've always dreamed of earning that AUMBA. You can open your options with the online offerings at Athabasca University. With more than 50,000 program and course alumni from over 100 different countries, it's evident that AU is the best choice for Canadians looking to make sure that their education journey is uninterrupted by barriers, geographical and otherwise. Your only commute to your device at Athabasca University. You can select your path today by checking out athabascau.ca. Well, 10 years ago today, the Rachel Notley-led Alberta New Democrats toppled a 40-plus year Conservative reign as the Alberta NDP won that 2015 election. They called it the Orange Crush, and it forever changed the dynamic of politics in Alberta. What an honor to have former Alberta Premier Rachel Notley joining us in studio today. Thanks for making time for us. It's nice to see you.
It's fun to be here. Nice studio.
Yeah, thank you.
Very charming.
Thank you very much. Yeah, what's it like for you to sit back and see you're in our green room there having a coffee, and you're seeing Naheed Nenshi talk about sort of plotting the course forward for Alberta's NDP. Are you ever able truly to give that up, or does it still kind of feel like your party a little bit? You took them from 4 to 54 seats.
Well, it's not my party. It's always been our party from day one. So that's always been something that really mattered a lot to me. But poor Naheed would if he could hear this, would say, she texted me twice in the middle of that interview.
What were you telling him in the text?
I was saying good interview.
Oh, you were saying, don't talk about that. Don't say that. Don't talk about that.
No, I was saying great job.
Okay,
but it was, so it's fun, and I have to say it's relaxing for me to be able to sort of, look at politics without every single element of it necessarily being my problem or my fault. So it's fun.
Yeah, well, I've got a lot of questions about present day politics, and we want to get to that with you. But as mentioned, today is the 10-year anniversary. I remember where I was. I was in the same room as you at the Westin in Edmonton, covering that election. And I'm not sure that everybody expected those results, but it has been made very clear to me, including from your longtime comms director, Cheryl Oates, that internal polling had been telling you and the party for a while that a win was imminent. What do you remember 10 years ago, how you were wrapping your mind around seeing those results coming in, and ultimately when it was confirmed that you would be Alberta's next premier?
Well, it was a very exciting time. It was a bit of a nerve-wracking time. I remember, and I've told the story a couple times, I think, back in the day, but I remember when the penny dropped, it was maybe 6 or 7 days before the election, and I suddenly sort of got in from campaigning at about 10 o'clock and called Lou, my husband, and said, oh my God, we're going to win and we're not doing any transition. This is horrifying. And what am I doing at these events at 9 o'clock at night? This is ridiculous. And he said, well, don't yell at me. Talk to your campaign manager. And so I did. And we decided from that point on that the campaign would actually, we actually sort of shut things down at a certain point in the day so that we could do transition, because the idea, of course, going from 4 MLAs to 54 in government, it was a big job. So it was a big job. And then a story that I haven't told a lot, but I remember the day after the election, so May 6th, being at home and being told I had the morning off, coming home after a month of campaigning, and the house was disgusting. It was so dirty.
Like, you're talking about your personal house.
This is not
a metaphor.
No. My personal house was really, really dirty. And I wanted to mop the floor. And somebody had broken the mop. And I wanted to go out and get the right kind of mop. And I realized I couldn't go out shopping for a mop because there was so many, because, it was so crazy. So I called a friend and said, oh my God, I need a mop. And so one friend went out said, I'll bring you over mine. And so they brought over theirs, and it was like, it's not the right kind of mop. And then another person brought another mop, and I'm like, this is not the right kind of mop. Why can't I go out and get the kind of mop I want? Anyway, so it was one of those things where I had to learn, okay, our life is going to be very different as long as this happens.
Well, did it ever return to normal Like there's some normal. I'm not going to say what you
Yeah.
drive. I don't want to identify that, but
Yeah.
I will let people know you arrived here yourself today.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
In a very practical vehicle, right? You parked it yourself. You're doing the thing. You come in. You're your own person. You've kind of returned to normal in that
Yeah.
sense. But I would imagine I don't know if you noticed, but as you were walking from your car to the front door of our building, a couple people were like, "Oh shit, that's Rachel Notley." It still
Yeah.
continues, obviously.
Yeah,
Did it take you a while to get used to it, and then the return to civilian life?
We got into routines, and so there were wins during the time in government in terms of being able to have more space, and then it got better after we were when we were in opposition. One thing that's I feel very, very privileged about is living in Edmonton. I mean, even when we were losing government, Edmonton's always been very supportive, and so I feel very lucky to be able to be always surrounded by my community and by my friends, and so I think not every politician gets that, but I feel very lucky to live here.
How do you think that 2015 election result changed politics in Alberta in the longer term? Like Jason Kenney criticizing you between 2015, in particular 2017 to 2019, always referred to your government as the accidental government, which I have to imagine, if I was you, that would have pissed me off. How did that land with you? And ultimately, longer term, how did you see that 2015 election factor into even today?
Yeah. Well, I think both the 2015 and the 23 election actually both served together to crystallize the fact that there are two parties in this province, and that it is okay to disagree with the party that is in power, and it is okay to have, sorry, I've got hair in my mouth, and it is okay to have, I think civil, but differentiating and differing opinions with one another. Growing up, I grew up in Northern Alberta. I went to university at Grand Prairie, U of A, and then I went to, I was in Toronto, I was in BC, I was all over the place. And when I would come back to Alberta, I'd always be a bit taken aback by how scared people were to talk about politics. And that's not good. That's not healthy. You don't move forward if you don't talk about new ideas and old ideas. And people in Alberta were scared to do that. And what I'm very proud of is that that's not the case anymore. And some people, we have to make sure that we don't paint that with the brush of polarization such that everybody gets scared to talk about differing opinions anymore. Because I think that's really helpful. I think that civil discourse, the town square, that conversation, what you do every day, is so, so important. And so now we can do that in Alberta. We need to be, I think we need to reorient ourselves towards the facts, and we need to have a few less death threats in between our conversations. But I do think that open conversation is critical, and we need to move away from that setting where people would say, "Oh, I can't say that publicly because then the government would discipline me." That is not healthy, and we have to always resist that.
We do see people paying the price for wearing their politics on their sleeve, and you hear some people, and I never blame these folks that say, "There's last thing I'm ever going to do is put a lawn sign out saying who I'm voting for," because it sort of can create tensions between neighbors and that sort of a thing. Yeah. But it strikes me that type of politicking, the nasty, aggressive politicking, has worked. But I think up until recently, I think that Canadians rejected prickish politics in the most recent federal election, and I have to wonder if that maybe will mark a trend globally. I'm paying keen to everything. With apologies, everything kind of seems to come back to the United States right now. Everybody looks at what's happening down there, and you look at Trump's most vociferous supporters, and one of the things they've really loved about him is he doesn't really give a shit about what anybody thinks about anything. But you wonder if that act wears thin after a while, and if it proves to be a less successful brand of politics, if fewer political practitioners might employ that approach.
Well, I absolutely agree, and I also agree a lot with what Naheed was saying earlier, which is that I think that both Poilievre, just in the last election, and Smith right now suffer from the fact that they only have one gear, and that one gear is to complain, and to polarize, and to tear down. And frankly, I think that's a bit of a function, I'm afraid, of the modern conservative movement, where their primary object is to tear down. And if that means tearing down civil society, if that means tearing even themselves down, that's okay, because they're tearing down anything that might be the product of people coming together to build something bigger than the sum of their parts, like, say, a hospital. And so I think that we need to focus on, as Billy said, getting shit done. You know, we need governments to be held accountable for what they accomplish. Right now we have a Danielle Smith government. The only accomplishments they can point to is failure. You know, pulling down our education system, making it the poorest in the country, blowing up our healthcare system, making it almost impossible to get access to healthcare, shooting costs, the most expensive car insurance in the country, you know, a mess in our electricity and our utilities, right? Most expensive, or the fastest growing in the country. They are not winning on the things that they're actually elected to be in charge of right now. And so instead they yell, they fight, they shake their fists, they point at clouds, and they hope that everybody looks up at the cloud that they should be angry at, as opposed to the person who's responsible for making sure their kids learn to read and write and have a good life when they get older.
How would you, if you were premier, how would you manage this, what appears to be a strengthening of the Alberta separation movement? I know some people just want to poo-poo it, they want to write it off. If you were still premier, how would you address it?
Well, to be clear, I think that if I were still premier, I would not have been throwing gasoline on the fire for my own personal political gain for the last 6 years. It started with Kenny. He has to take ownership for this. He brought that group of people together. He gave them the voice. He gave them power. He used them to bring the two parties together. And then Danielle Smith just took the next chapter in the book that he started writing. And then she has rushed forward through several more chapters, giving voice to a small group of people. So I would argue that if we were to be more focused on actually serving the concerns that people have and giving answers to the questions, rather than trying to point at somebody for them to yell at, that we might not have that same culture and that same level of anger, because she is stoking the anger for solely one purpose, and that is her political bottom line, not the balancing of the family checkbook or you know, at the end of every month at the kitchen table. That's not the bottom line she's concerned about. It's her political bottom line.
Did you see Jason Kenney's tweet on May 1st about this? I want to reference this.
Yeah.
I'm showing it on my screen right now. Yeah. Kenny says, memo to all the tough-talking Western Alberta separatist keyboard warriors. He says, in 2021, you had a real-life Western separatist party running against Justin Trudeau. He says all you could muster was 29 candidates from the absurdly named Maverick Party, who collectively won 35,000 votes. He then has the crying, laughing emoji. 35,000 votes, that's 0.2% of votes cast. You won fewer votes across the West than a typical MP wins in a single riding. What happened to your party? Like countless Western separatist parties before, it folded like a cheap suit. With apologies to Monty Python, it's now a dead party. No more. Cease to be. Bereft of life. Rests in peace. An ex-party. That doesn't sound like a guy that's flirting with them. It sounds like a guy, number one, trying to distance himself from them. And 100%. Number two, maybe trying to soft campaign for the next leader of the federal Conservatives. But what do you make of that?
No, I mean, absolutely. I mean, don't get me wrong. I mean, he clearly, you know, whether he'll ever admit it, he did certainly understand the problem that he created for himself in right before he lost the leadership, and then as he watched Danielle Smith take over the party from him, and he's been distancing himself ever since. And so, yeah, I mean, a lot of the sentiments, I don't know that I would have been quite as insulting to everybody as he was there, but I guess they're his former people, so have at her. But you know, the some of the principles there, I don't disagree with. But you know, dude, you kind of brought them to the party in the first place.
What's it been like for you to see some of your? We had I'm not sure if you know, but your longtime colleague, your director of comms, Cheryl Oates, yes. Successful new podcast, by the way, with Erica Barutis and The Discourse. They joined us May 5th. I encourage people to check out that episode. But we talked to her about not just the carbon tax kind of losing popularity across the country, and ultimately, you know, Pierre Poilievre promising to axe it, and then Mark Carney kind of axing it and lopping off a big part of Poilievre's campaign promise at the knees, but also the UCP bringing back union and corporate donations. And Cheryl reminding us that was a big part of your Bill 1. That was a big part of the very first thing you did. So the carbon tax and banning union and corporate donations, both policies have been reversed in one way, shape, or form. Your thoughts?
Well, two things. Let me start on the carbon tax, and let me start with the most recent, and go backwards. So, in terms of the Carney decision to say he's going to axe the tax, and the fact that, frankly, many people in our NDP leadership race also said the same thing in last year in 2024. I also said it while I was still leader, that it probably had to go at that point. And it is because, unfortunately, the Trudeau government made the decision to buckle under to the politicization that had happened with respect to that tax. And when they did what they did with Atlantic Canada, it was over. It was over, right? As soon as they did that, when they exempted Atlantic Canada, it was done. And the sort of thinning argument that had been in place in support of the program, it just stretched, it broke, it was over. I'm there. What I will say that never got a lot of airtime is when the Liberals, and this is not going to be terribly popular except to really hardcore New Democrats, so this will be fun for your listeners to yell at me about, but it's okay. When the Liberals took over the tax, they made a fundamental choice, which I disagreed with at the time. The carbon tax did two things, was designed to do actually two things. One, to serve as a sort of as an economic signal to get people to make different choices, right? And that's what all the economists, the Andrew Leaches of the world, God bless them, that's what they wanted to put in place. Wasn't actually my first choice for how to deal with emissions when we first got elected in 2015, but it ended up being the only one that would keep capital in Alberta, because the cap and trade model meant that capital would have moved out of Alberta really quickly to buy credits from other jurisdictions. So we had to take that. However, I didn't buy that model 100%. And so what we did was we didn't give all of the tax back to people. We kept about half of it. We fully rebated it to low and middle income folks. So low and middle income people ended up way ahead. It was a very progressive tax. But the other half of it we kept, and we kept that to do really critical, actual measurable things to reduce emissions, like paying out the folks so we could phase out coal, which, by the way, is the single biggest reduction in greenhouse gas emissions in Canada's over the last 20 years. And that is a real measurable thing. Not only is it measurable in that the emissions came down, it's measurable that in the city of Edmonton, there are now studies that show respiratory complaints and visits to the hospitals as a result of poor air quality have come down. We have measurably changed people's ability to breathe in this city because of phasing out coal. So it was a win. But the Liberals abandoned that part of it. The other thing we did was we put money aside to kickstart the biggest renewable energy industry bump on the continent, which took place starting around 2017, and it was funded with extra funds from the Climate Leadership Plan. And so, had the UCP not embarked upon a sort of brain-dead, ideologically driven attack on renewable energy, we would still be growing that sector. But it was a big bump for us. So that's what I would say about that. And so it's too bad, but I don't think that the task of reducing emissions, the task of supporting our conventional oil and gas industry, and the task of positioning ourselves for additional energy growth is any less important now than it was 10 years ago. The other thing, Bill 1, Danielle Smith, Rob Anderson, Jason Kenney, all those people jumped up to say, yeah, we're on side. We should take big money out of politics. Corruption, bad. Big money in politics, bad. Yeah, we agree with you, NDP. It was a unanimous decision. And now suddenly, no, corruption, good. Big money in politics, good. Let's go back to that. Let's emulate the United States as much as we can. That's very sad. It's really too bad to see them change the way they did.
What do you say to people that there's people arguing that allowing for union and corporate donations would benefit the NDP more than the Conservatives?
Absolutely not.
How come?
Unions have never come anywhere close to donating as much as corporate Canada has donated and does donate to to their favorite parties.
Okay, let me. I want to circle back on coal because I don't think that the average Albertan, myself included, is 100% aware of what's still going on right now. There's still exploration happening, right? There's still activity. Albertans have pushed back across party lines, across political affiliations against coal mining on the eastern slopes. Yet it does continue. What does the average Albertan need to know, and how is this sitting with you? You would understand better than the average person what's happening right now.
Absolutely. Well, I don't know if better than the average person, but my understanding of what's going on. So just to separate from what I was just talking about, there's the issue of burning coal for electricity, which we stopped, which is good, making people more healthy. Yay. Now there's the question of are we mining it for export for different things, maybe burning for electricity or for lower emission activity. Either way, we said, and Albertans said, and even the UCP under Jason Kenney agreed, finally, that they had to stop mining coal in the eastern slopes. And then the UCP broke their promise on that, and they are doing everything they can to invite mining of coal on the eastern slopes. And I think the most important thing to remember about this is they say, oh, well, it happens in BC all the time. Well, it doesn't happen all the time, but it does happen. And there has been incidents of water supplies being poisoned in BC. BC has multiple mountain ranges and multiple supplies of water. Alberta, Saskatchewan, and most of Manitoba have one supply, and it is one slope from the Rocky Mountains, the eastern slopes. That's it. We got one range of mountains, one source of water. It flows east from our borders all the way across Western Canada. We get one chance to keep that water clean and safe and usable for everybody from Pincher Creek, all the way into Manitoba. And so we can't afford to play with it. And that is what ranchers are saying. That is what business leaders are saying. That is what municipal leaders are saying. That is what Albertans are saying. And the UCP doesn't get it. They're lying to them. They're breaking their promise. And they're continuing to try to attract investment in coal mining in the eastern slopes.
In closing, I have to ask you, obviously, about interesting development over the weekend with NDP members voting to have the opportunity. They're not automatically opted out of a federal membership with the NDP. You and I have talked about this many times over the years, and how I think probably it was a political inconvenience, though you never would put it that way. But for provincial NDP MLAs and obviously party leader as well. I'm curious, A, what you think of that move, and if it benefits the Alberta NDP. I have to assume you're going to say yes. And B, Cheryl Oates tells us there's no way in hell that you're interested in seeking the leadership of the federal NDP. But I don't have to tell you this. You're at the top of a lot of lists when people are talking about who they think can turn that party around, who they think can raise that party like a phoenix from the ashes after obviously a very disappointing result on April 28th. Your thoughts on the state of the federal party, your future within it, if there is one, and ultimately what this change in relationship might mean for your provincial party.
Well, let me start with the last thing first. Let me just say, there was certainly a lot of discussion about it, and there was a strong mandate for that choice. And so, and I don't think it's going to make anywhere near the difference to the federal party. I think that most people probably won't bother to opt out, but certainly I won't opt out. I'll say that right now. I've always thought it's a little bit of a tempest in a teapot. I spent most of my time as leader being told that my best friend and boss was Justin Trudeau, even though I spoke with the man about once every 18 months.
Is that right?
And so there's reality, and then there's what people say about you. And so whether that change is there or not there, people are still going to do the guilt by association attack if that is politically convenient to them at any given time. So it's not really going to change anything. And of course, as Naheed pointed out, in our leadership race, we had over 80,000 members sign up. So it didn't really seem like people were that reluctant to sign up. That being said, it was fully canvassed in the leadership race, and most of the candidates talked about this solution. So it is a fair conclusion, because it means that the things that the candidates talked about came to fruition, and so be it. In terms of the long-term fortunes of the federal party, what I've been saying to a few folks is, we were here in 1993. And I still remember being in a campaign office in '93 when we lost Edmonton East at that time, which we held by the NDP, and it was a few months after we'd lost every seat in the Alberta NDP. And I remember my husband and I were the ones, we were jumping up and down, yay, we still have seats, and everyone else was looking at us like, are you nuts?
Yeah.
Didn't you not see what we just lost? And we were like, we will live to fight again. It is fine. And that was true. The difference is that was at the very beginning, what turned into a 13-year-long term for the Liberals. We're almost we're close to the end of that right now. We're on the back end of 10 years with the Liberals, and I highly doubt we're going to see another 13. So I think that the demand for a progressive, worker-friendly voice in the House of Commons in Ottawa, someone that stands up for the rights of working people, that stands up for how people are protected during what is going to be very rough waters over the next couple of years, that stands up to make sure that the growth in our healthcare system continues and that it is improved and there for us and our loved ones when we need it. I think that the demand for that is going to grow, and so the interest in the federal NDP will also rebound. There are many people out there who will be good leaders, who could be good leaders. I am very fond of my MP, Heather McPherson. I think she is an incredible superstar. she was elected in 2019. She has done nothing but impress. And I hope she gives it very, very, very serious consideration, because I'd be very excited to support her if she did.
Why doesn't it appeal to you?
I am 61 years old, and I've.
That's like the new 40.
Well, yeah.
You still run every day. What are you talking about?
I know, and I want to be able to enjoy that stuff. Yeah.
Fair enough.
Yeah. So anyway, and I don't have the kind of energy that, like, I've been spending a lot of time with Heather, during the campaign and since, and she's got an incredible amount of energy, and I remember that about me. So I'm really excited about what she can bring to the party.
All right. Yeah, a lot of talk about how Pierre Poilievre, you talk about the voice for the workers and advocating for the workers,
yes,
or the middle class or the blue collar voters, that
and
kind of
no
idea.
question, Poilievre they've done a good job of connecting with folks on that front, and I think that the reality is that their policies will do the opposite, and so that's sort of one proof point that will ultimately give us some capacity to take those folks back. But also we need to do better. 100%. As the NDP, we need to do better thinking about how regular folks can live their life with security and respect and self-respect. And we haven't done that well enough, and we need to be better at it.
It's interesting to hear you talk about the future of the Liberals, and you're kind of like, you're talking about how, the 13 years and it's winding up, and or 10 years, the end of I don't see another 13 years coming. You're not, that's not exactly like a resound. I'm not expecting you to endorse Mark Carney or to endorse a Liberal government, but I'm a little, you're not convinced that this has changed. You're not convinced that the former governor of the Bank of Canada, despite maybe some early wins, what appear to be some early wins, can sustain this type of momentum.
Well, I could be wrong, but and I could easily be wrong. And let me say, in an uncharacteristically nonpartisan way, I appreciate that the fact that this guy has chosen to step up to help the country at a really difficult time, and so that's. I respect him for that choice. I also remember what it was like coming into a government when every indicator outside of the control of government said that we were coming into some really hard times. I mean, that people in Alberta in May of 2015 weren't feeling yet what the experts were telling everybody was going to happen. And I think we're in a similar place nationally now, because the Trump tariffs are dragging down the world economy in a way that is very concerning. And so I think there's going to be some tough waters ahead. And whoever is in charge when that happens, it's hard to maintain support during those kinds of circumstances. And Mr. Carney is leading a government that had a lot of hostility directed towards it a mere 2.5 months ago.
Yeah, fair point. Thank you so much for doing this. Do you have can you tell us about your social calendar today? Is there like a big 10-year anniversary thing? Everyone's getting together and reminiscing?
We actually had a great taste of 10 years
Did you?
On the weekend during our convention. So that was fun. Yeah.
Yeah, I bet. I saw you speaking at the convention as well. Wasn't there? Did I saw a photo of you up on stage?
No, you had a photo. You saw a photo. I didn't speak at convention.
Oh, you just showed up and got everybody excited?
Yeah, I was just around.
You were just
shouting,
around?
Yeah.
Okay. Really?
Yeah.
Interesting. That's a bit of a flex on their part, isn't it? She's here. We're not bringing. She's here. Just mixing and mingling. Get the big names in the room. That's what they do. Hey, well, listen. It's always a pleasure to connect with you, and I know obviously our live chat here, as it always is, very engaged, and a lot of people wanting to pass along their well wishes and their gratitude for your public service, and you've still got your detractors too, which I'm sure will be of no surprise to you.
Yeah.
But thanks for making time for us here on the 10th anniversary of Orange Crush. It's a day that I think safe to say any politically aware Albertan will never forget.
Thank you.
Rachel Notley right here on Real Talk. You can let us know what you think about the interview to talk@ryanjespersen.com, or if you're watching it on YouTube, go ahead and leave a comment. We get to as many as we can, and we'd love to feature your thoughts in the next episode of the show. These interviews are made possible with the support of amazing Real Talk partners like the team at North Road Investment Council. All this talk about budgets and bottom lines, economic successes and the like. North Road Investment Council wants you to know that they are a steady hand and a studied voice that's been guiding their clients through wealth and investing for many, many years. And of course, the reality is successful saving can create unexpected challenges. And that's where their financial advisors, led by Marshall and Carrie, come in. They partner with discerning families, foundations, associations to provide expert navigation through the complexities of wealth accumulation and investment advisory services for clients across the country. Their expertise as financial planners ensures that they focus on the destination when building your plan. And they provide different service business units for that, including insurance, financial planning, investment counsel, and digital risk advisory. Nobody else in the space has a dedicated team member working exclusively on digital risk advisory services for their clients. When you get in touch with North Road Investment Council, you're not getting an automated reply. You're not hearing from a bot. The members on this team waiting to read every word and get back to you as soon as possible. This is personal wealth advice, personal financial planning, personal digital risk advisory. You can learn more about it today at northroadic.com. Hey, did you catch our most recent Real Talk Roundtable? This was on May 2nd when we sat down with a couple of industry leaders working in the oil and gas space out of Nisku. Interesting thoughts on not just the politics of pipelines, but the future of industry, including, we're talking to Naheed Nenshi about unemployment in Alberta. Rob Reeves from Global Power explaining to us where they're drawing their young talent from and what the future of Alberta energy looks like. This is all leading up to the 2025 Nisku Energy Show, which I'm proud to be hosting on the 14th and the 15th of May down at the beautiful Silent Ice Sports and Entertainment Center in Nisku. This is hosted by the Leduc, Nisku, and Wetaskiwin Region Chambers. An unparalleled opportunity to learn more about local innovation and collaboration, to understand more about the expertise and the advancements that are shaping Alberta's future. There's going to be a job fair. There's going to be incredible networking opportunities. It all kicks off with the Premier's Breakfast on May 14th. You can get your tickets today by visiting yourchamber.ca. And we also want to make sure that you've got your tickets for Northwest Fest. This is Canada's longest running nonfiction film festival, set to kick off May 8th, running for a full week right here in Alberta's capital city. You can check out the lineup on their website. That's northwestfest.ca. They're also home to Northwest Fear Fest, to Rainbow Visions Film Festival, and a whole lot more. You've got a lot of options when it comes to Northwest Fest 2025. You can check out details on their all-access passes that are on sale. And if you're a Real Talk patron or a Real Talk YouTube member, keep your eye out for opportunities. We're going to be giving out some tickets to Northwest Fest over the next while. And later this week, a Real Talk Roundtable celebrating the best in nonfiction storytelling These will all be from the lineup at Northwest Fest. Again, you can check them out online at northwestfest.ca. Got an interesting email here from Jan, who wrote in to talk@ryanjespersen.com. And Jan said, Jespo, I just wanted to put this on the radar and point out to Real Talkers that when it was announced that there would be an opening in Battle River-Crowfoot for Pierre Poilievre to run in a by-election, the Prime Minister said, I will ensure that it happens as soon as possible. No games, nothing, just straight, referencing a CBC interview with Nick Westall. Jan says, this is the kind of politics that I think we should expect and demand. The Premier, Danielle Smith, can delay Nenshi's by-election, but she lowers herself and Alberta with her petty politicking. Jan says, I think we've normalized worse and worse behavior from our politicians, and I would tell my own children to behave better than this. No games. Do the right thing. Let Nenshi take his seat. That from Jan. Now, the Premier does have till June 30th to trigger that by-election, but you have to imagine that Mark Carney saying that he will trigger that by-election for Pierre Poilievre as soon as possible sets a bit of a precedent. And nationally speaking, you have to expect that eyes would be on Alberta to see what Danielle Smith will do with this one. Now, we're recording this episode. We're streaming it live to the many, many of you that are joining us. That Real Talk live stream presented by California Closets about 5 hours after we do this show. The Premier of Alberta, Danielle Smith, will be speaking to Albertans in a live broadcast. And we do have it from a reputable source that an election readiness meeting called by the United Conservative Party over the weekend. They talked about a lot of things, including capitalizing on discontent among the Conservative base to stand up against Mark Carney, to stand up for Alberta. And while we don't know exactly what the Premier will announce, what she'll say to us later this afternoon, we do, of course, understand that there are opportunities, political opportunities, that they'll hope to capitalize on. It's a bit of a cynical way to put it, isn't it? I don't think that the average constituent is looking for their elected representatives to be capitalizing on political opportunities. But here's the thing. This could be, and as we've heard some of our experts suggest, including Shannon Phillips and Ken Bosenkool on our Real Talk Roundtable, that was back on, I believe, the 1st of May. You can check it out on our YouTube archive or our podcast archive. There's expectations that the United Conservatives will trigger an early election in Alberta. Now, why would that be? Well, potentially that conditions today for the Conservatives in Alberta are objectively better now in every single way than they will be 2 years from now when an election would be called. So Conservatives will look to exploit a low watermark, relatively speaking, of support for the NDP in Alberta and reclaim legitimacy. This from the meeting over the weekend. Reclaim legitimacy at the Premier's table to unseat Doug Ford as a negotiator for Canada. Apparently, Doug Ford's rise to prominence as one of the top Canadian negotiators has been rubbing Alberta's Premier the wrong way. I'm sure that will be news to nobody. And then, of course, you wonder, well, what would it be over the next 2 years that might harm this Conservative government? Ken Bosenkool got into it in a recent episode. Ken's a Conservative, by the way. Different legal and ethics investigations will, they believe, improve the NDP's chances, obviously. And so the idea is to go now to an election before those findings are released. Now, this is a story we'll continue to follow, and on our next episode of Real Talk, the 6th of May, of course, we'll get into what the Premier had to say to Albertans and what it all means. We also wanted to touch on something interesting on this talk of Alberta sovereignty, this talk of Alberta separation, a rally at the Alberta Legislature over the weekend. And did you see what a journalist who was covering that rally posted? Bianca Millions, a mainstream media reporter, was at the Alberta Legislature over the weekend covering this. And a bit of a troubling report from her standpoint. I know Bianca relatively well, and I've never seen her post anything like this before. Says covering a rally in support of Alberta separation at the legislature, says I won't bring my personal political views into it, but I have never been treated so terribly as a member of the media. She says, I was called names, I was yelled at, surrounded, attempted to be pushed out of an interview with one of the organizers of the event. She said it was an absolutely degrading experience. She says you can't be against mainstream media if you will not allow mainstream media to tell both sides. I was there to report fairly and honestly. I was there to give the people who called me a bitch a chance to talk openly about their viewpoints. All of this to say, the organizers were very kind, she says, and I appreciate their time and willingness to speak, but the alarming majority of people at the event were needlessly mean and rude. She says, I take my job seriously, and I don't get offended by much in this line of work. She says, but I'm appalled. An interesting report from that rally over the weekend. If you're going to pull off something like this to organizers, if you're going to try to rally support for this type of thing, you can't be behaving like that, in particular when you know it's going to be reported on. I thought that was something that was troubling, something that needed to be addressed. If you were at that rally and you have a different thought or a different report on it, we want to hear from you to talk@ryanjespersen.com. We'll wrap this episode with a positive, with something outside the news cycle. It's what we do the first episode of every week, courtesy of our friends at Solar by Kuby. It's positive reflections where, while we don't pretend like there's nothing going on in the world around us that demands our immediate and serious attention, we also recognize that there are positive things, happy things, funny things, soul-filling and edifying things happening around us, and that's an important reminder to focus on. Now, we asked you to submit your favorite positive reflections, and that's exactly what Brandon did in an email to us, where he linked to an Instagram post from Nature Fest. And Brandon says, Jespo, I'm not sure if this qualifies for positive reflections, but it made me laugh out loud, so I thought I'd share it. Brandon, we have decided this is indeed a wonderful fit for positive reflections. Reports of a male guinea pig nicknamed Randy, who gained access to a female-only enclosure at Hatton Adventure World in the UK. This was a 10-year-old story that has only just surfaced as staff spilled the beans on Randy's escapades. This male guinea pig either escaped his enclosure or was accidentally placed with female guinea pigs by a child visitor during a handling session. You know, that petting zoo kind of idea? Well, Randy remained undetected among the females for several weeks until staff noticed his exhausted appearance and his weight loss, which prompted an investigation. Here's what they found. During his time in the female enclosure, Randy the guinea pig impregnated approximately 100 female guinea pigs. Now, guinea pigs typically produce litters of about 4 pups, and that meant that the park had to anticipate a population increase of 400 offsprings. And by August of that year, about 100 babies had been born, with more expected in subsequent weeks. Hatton Adventure World consequently expanding their guinea pig facilities to accommodate the population surge and implemented stricter protocols to ensure proper celebration or separation of males and females. Now, it was the comments that made us laugh out loud after Brandon passed this along. The Kid Bellow says, not all heroes wear capes. I liked World in My Closet, who said this is yet another example of how male birth control can be way more effective. And the Ginger 87 says, exhausted and lost weight. They didn't give bro a break in there. Owen Frost Photography may have the best comment of all. He says, close enough. Welcome back, Genghis Khan. Of course, a reference to Genghis Khan, who was well known for many things, including fathering thousands of offspring. Brandon, it made us laugh out loud. We love this type of thing. That's the whole point of positive reflections, to put a smile on our faces regardless of the source. If you have something that filled your bucket, something, a random act of kindness, maybe somebody paying it forward, we want to hear about it. To talk@ryanjespersen.com. Positive Reflections is proudly presented by Solar by Kuby. You can get a free solar quote today by visiting kuby.ca. Coming up on Tuesday's Real Talk, that's the 6th of May, we're going to be talking to Grand Chief Greg Desjardins from the Confederacy of Treaty 6 First Nations. All this talk about Alberta sovereignty is ignoring the treaties. What does he make of that? We'll get into it. Plus, a disability roundtable as we shine a light on the stories that demand to be addressed, whether it's underfunding, disrespect, lack of opportunities, hurdles in the way of Albertans and Canadians living with disabilities. It's time we talked about it at length, and so that's exactly what we'll do. In the meantime, thanks for liking and sharing this episode. Send us an email, leave us a comment, and of course, tell your friends you heard it on Real Talk.
Real Talk is hosted by Ryan Jespersen, executive producer Josh Dunford, technical producer John Hicks, general manager Katie Cook-Chivers, account coordinator Lawrence Derlego, human resources Lena Shepard, website design Mike Johnston, voiceover by me, Carrie Skelton. Real Talk's editorial board is Supriya Dubedi, Ahmed Ali, Randy Morin, Ann Castleman, Corey Hogan, Harman Kandola, Catherine O'Neill, and Chris Henderson. Member Emerita, Julie Rohr. Real Talk is recorded in Edmonton, Alberta on Treaty 6 territory, the traditional and ancestral territory of the Cree, Dene, Blackfoot, Saulteaux, and Nakota Sioux, home to the Métis settlements and the Métis Nation of Alberta. Real Talk is a relay project. For more, check out ryanjespersen.com.